In the last video, we designed this module, and today I'm going to take you through building this module step by step using basic tools. If you're looking to build modular benchwork that you can use for your model railroad or diorama that includes a built-in lighting valance, then stay tuned for this video. So I picked up a couple sheets of 3/4 inch good two-side ply from my local hardware store. Although a bit more expensive, I prefer to use this type of plywood because you can stain it, paint it, or just leave it natural. Although the module I'm building today only requires one sheet of plywood, I did pick up two as I do plan on making a sister module for it eventually. So I decided that I was going to do some of the first cuts off of my 4x8 sheet of plywood right here on the garage floor. This would save me from having to manhandle this huge piece of plywood by myself through my table saw. To do this, I purchased a Craig guide that would allow me to use my circular saw like a track saw. Now let me tell you what a pain in the ass this thing was to set up. This jig was very difficult to assemble. The instructions were clear, but it was so fiddly to make it fit onto my circular saw and be accurate. I think installing these two screws was the easiest part. I really struggled for a while trying to get that gray piece to slide nicely into the blue adapter plate. After reviewing the instructions, I realized it was assembled correctly and it was just going to be a sticky fit. Here, I've set my guide to 4 inches and I'm going to start ripping my first pieces. If you look at the inset diagram, you'll see a picture of my cut sheet. I'm currently ripping the 4-inch boards that are below the dash line. Now I changed my mind several times while cutting this board. I was trying to find the easiest way to do this using my Craig tool to help guide my circular saw. However, I realized I was going to start running into a bit of an issue as I could not cut all the way down the length of my board because it would ruin some other pieces. So I got out my jigsaw and decided I'm going to cut out a square and use that to cut some of my lengths off. Before I did that though, I decided to use my circular saw and just take the last remaining leftover section off the bottom of my 4x8 board. So after cutting off the last section of the 4x8 sheet of plywood, I decided I was going to cut out the section that's going to form the legs of the module. As you can see here, I had to fight with the jig a little bit as I had already cut out one leg portion and decided against doing it the way I was going to do it, and instead decided I just needed to slice this whole section off the 4x8 sheet of plywood to make it easier. So what I'm doing now is I'm using a previously cut 4-inch board to outline the notch I need to make in one of my C-shaped pieces. This notch is shown in the upper left corner of the inset diagram. The point of doing this now is to make sure I don't make a miscut later. And slivers suck. Before I move on and cut out the C-shaped pieces, I'm going to take the piece I set aside earlier for my legs and cut out the 2-inch wide strips that I require for that purpose. I'm going to need 8 overall to make all 4 legs. Well, now that I got that out of my system, I'm going to cut out 3 squares. These squares are going to form the C-shaped brackets that form the main structure of the module. In order to do that, I'm just going to cut 2 of them right here on the garage floor. So what I'm doing here is I'm marking the corner of the second C-shaped piece. I just want to keep my orientation correct, as these squares are almost perfectly square, and it would be very easy to accidentally cut into the wrong side when I move to the next step. So now that I marked my side to keep myself oriented, I'm just going to cut this board into 2. I now will have 2 perfect squares, but the third square I'm going to need to take up onto the table saw just to trim it that final little bit to make it perfect. So this module has 3 C-shaped pieces that are required to form the structure of the valence and the bottom part of the module. So what I'm doing is I'm just measuring out where the back side of the C will be. What I have to do is run my table saw from right to left in this image and not go across that line I just drew. I made a couple of marks a couple inches back from this line just so I know where to stop the table saw. I'm going to flip this board over, just repeat some of those measurements again on the second side. When I'm at the table saw, I'm going to make 1 long cut in to make 1 leg, and then flip the board over and make 1 long cut in again. That way I don't have to set the fence twice. I will use my circular saw to make a plunge cut right along this line I'm drawing here, and that's how I'm going to cut out the back side of the C. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of me cutting the legs of the C shape on the table saw, so you're going to have to settle for me adjusting the fence. But you get the picture, you know what I'm up to. So as you can see, I've made the cuts on the table saw on the long legs of the C. Now on this short back side of the C, I need to make a plunge cut with my circular saw in order to cut that out. I do plan to use a hand saw to finish out the cuts. Unfortunately for me, this was my first rodeo using a circular saw to make a plunge cut. I did make a bit of a mess of it, however, I was able to finish the cut with a hand saw and then tidy it up later with some sanding. Also, I couldn't see crap with the safety glasses on, so I used my safety squints instead. Don't judge me. As you can see here, I made a nice quality cut. So I bought a cheap Japanese pole saw off of Amazon. I knew I was going to need a saw like this to help complete the cuts going into the corners. I thought it would be a lot easier to use than my crosscut saw that I have for other woodworking purposes. And sure enough, it made quick work of getting into the corners and making nice, precise cuts. It took a bit of practice, but once I got used to the Japanese pole saw, I found it was quicker and more efficient than using any other type of saw. I'll just have to sand this flat a little bit. Doesn't terribly matter because it's all going to be covered. So here I'm just double checking the notches I traced earlier by using another 4-inch piece of board. I just want to make sure these are perfectly traced nicely and I can use my Japanese pole saw to finish the job. So the pole saw made quick work of cutting these notches. Once I've got the notches cut out, I'm able to take a 4-inch piece and just double check that it fits. We'll just ignore that my cut is a little crooked. So once I finished cutting out my final notch with my Japanese pole saw, I was able to take the 4-inch pieces and just double check that all the 6 notches I did cut would accept these pieces nice and snugly. Oh, that's rigid. Nice. Before I decided to move on to the assembly of the main part of the module, I wanted to do the glue up for the legs as it would take some time for them to dry. This module has 4 legs that are made by gluing 2 pieces of board together. I'm just using regular yellow carpenter's glue to do this. I did find that this glue wanted to set up way too fast though, and I had to work really quick. If you buy Titebond 2 or Titebond 3, they'll have more working time and you'll be able to do all your glue ups at once before you hit the clamping phase. Now I would have preferred to put more clamps on each of these legs as I was doing the glue up. However, I only know one guy who has enough clamps to do that, and that certainly wasn't me. He knows who I'm talking about. I had to wait for the first 3 legs to finish setting up so that I could steal the clamps from them to finish the 4th leg. I don't know, maybe Santa will bring me some for Christmas. Now that the legs are all glued together, I'm going to cut them down to their final length. So the tracks in my module are going to be at 52 inches off the floor. In order to accomplish this, I need to cut the legs down to about 49¼ inches long. This will leave enough room for the T-nut on the bottom. I think I'm really going to be wishing I had a 20 amp circuit right about now. I became good friends with the electrical panel during this build. So now I'm going to make some awkward cut here to get the C-shaped piece to length. This particular section is going to have a 2-foot reveal where the model railroad is. So basically the exposed part of my benchwork will be 2 feet wide. So I managed to get most of the C-shaped cuts done without blowing the breaker. However, this saw has such an initial startup draw that I really need to get that 20 amp circuit installed in my garage. So now I'm just cutting up some of the 4-inch boards to make the cross members that I'm going to need for the benchwork. So I bought some adjustable feet off of Amazon. These will allow me to make minor adjustments to each of the module legs to account for any slope in the garage floor. Here I'm just verifying that it's a 1/2 inch hole that needs to be drilled in the bottom of the leg. Now that I know it's a 1/2 inch hole, I'm just going to use my square to find the center of the bottom of this leg. Then I'll know exactly where to drill. Now with the hole drilled, I can fit the T-nut into the bottom of the leg. With the adjustable feet now installed in the bottom of each leg section, I can make a mark to figure out where I'm going to join the two legs with the cross piece. I decided to put my cross piece 6 inches from the bottom of the leg itself. Once bolted in place, this will make for a really rigid leg assembly.
All the right words pours from your mouth, holding me tight, saying I'm all yours, but I feel in my gut it doesn't feel right. I see in your eyes, tell me no lie, 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 lie. Tell me no lies, tell me no lie, 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 lie. Tell me no lies, tell me no lie, 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 lie. Tell me no lies, tell me no lie, 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 lie. Let's talk about your ex.
Here I'm just taking the time to make sure my carriage bolt placement is even on this board so that it looks nice when it's all finished. Each leg assembly is going to have 4 carriage bolts holding it together. This will make sure that it's nice and rigid. Placing one of the bolts in the first drilled hole allowed me to make sure that this board is well aligned before I drilled the second hole. Once I had all the holes drilled and all the carriage bolts back in place, I flipped the almost completed leg section over and added the washers and nuts to the back side. This entire process was repeated again to make the second leg assembly for the other side of the module. And of course I only have ratcheting box end wrenches in metric and not imperial, so I got a little bit of a workout here. Now I'm able to put my assemblies aside and we can get on to the next phase of the project. So now I'm using the table saw to rip out the final 4-inch strips that I need to make the cross members for my module. With the 4-inch cross members now ripped on the table saw, I can use my chop saw to cut them to length. Miraculously, I did not blow any breakers while making these cuts. So I'm just measuring for 2 holes that I'm going to place into each cross member. One hole will be for a power bus and one hole will be for an accessory bus for other electronics. These holes are going to be 1 inch in diameter and I'm using a threaded spade bit to get that job done. I mean, Forstner bits are expensive. That'll do. Now I'm just marking out the holes on the C-shaped sections of the benchwork. These holes are going to be in the same alignment as the other cross members. So now I'm going to break out the sander and knock down some of the sharp edges on all the pieces prior to doing the assembly. I'm also going to use the sander to tidy up the edge where I did the plunge cuts earlier with the circular saw. Okay, when I did my plunge cuts, some of them were a little bit uneven, so I'm just going to quickly sand down to the line here. Just make this as flat as I can. This is 80 grit sandpaper I'm using. And again in here, so on this one you can see the line here, a little bit take off there. All right, that looks good. So the backdrop's actually gonna go against this. It's gonna sandwich onto this. So it really doesn't matter. None of this is actually gonna be seen at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm gonna come back over this with 120 and just kind of take down all these sharp bits. This one needs a little bit of work as well. You can see the dark line there. I'm just ripping up a thin strip of wood that I will cut into small blocks. Those small blocks will then be glued into the benchwork and serve as a guide to allow the legs to insert cleanly. Well, in theory anyways. Because I need to cut multiple blocks the same length from the same piece of wood, I'm going to set up a stop block here to help me make the process a lot faster. Okay, gonna cut a 45-degree bevel on the end of this, times 4, but I'm going to do it just about halfway through, like that. There we go. Then when the legs are inserted, I'll have something to guide against to help them get in. There we go, bunch of bevels. Okay, so we have our leg system here. And what I've done is I've created these little blocks to help guide the legs into the framework when I get to that point. So I'll show you how that works. When this leg inserts into the benchwork this way, it's gonna come up against a stop. So there's gonna be a stop glued in so that it can't go too far into the benchwork. What I'm gonna have is this angled piece like this, so that when the leg is inserted, it can just hit this and just be guided in, and then it'll come to a stop inside the benchwork. And that's what's gonna hold it in place. And this is the exact width of this leg. So it should be a nice snug fit, and I won't use any screws to hold that in place. So now I'm just giving my cross members their final sanding and trying to take off all the corners and hard edges just to make the assembly just a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner. I will do some final sanding once this build is completely done. Once I had all the pieces sanded, I was ready to set up my Craig jig and start drilling the pocket holes. I hooked my shop back up to the Craig jig, and this cut the mess down to literally 0. The Craig jig is great for capturing all of the chips and pieces that fly out when you're doing your drilling. This is one Craig accessory I would recommend all day long. To avoid having pocket holes on the outside of my finished product, I am just going to mark the outside edges of all my boards. And here I'm just marking the C-shaped piece to receive pocket holes. With all the pocket holes drilled, I can now lay out the pieces for assembly. I'm just checking the fit here of one of my long stretcher pieces into the corner of the first C-shaped piece. Getting this first piece to line up and stay put while I was trying to install the pocket screws was a little bit of a nightmare. I wish I had clamped it a little bit tighter, as some of these joints did drift a little bit. Pocket hole screws do have a tendency to pull out of alignment a little bit if they're not tightly clamped. I tried using my corner clamp by Craig. I've only had limited success with that, and I just gave up on it and just held the pieces. So here I had a quote-unquote brilliant idea to make two pieces of wood a spacer. They are the same thickness of the legs that will eventually go into this slot. You'll see how much of a pain that was. Alright, with the clamp off, we're about to get onto the struggle bus.
I'm sorry, I'm a dipshit.
So the definition of insanity is doing it again, right? So I'm going to give it a second shot, but this one actually goes a lot smoother. So now I'm just installing the rest of the cross members. They're a bit more of a snug fit, but they went in relatively easily. So here I'm gluing in the spacer blocks that are used to keep the legs in place on each end of the module. Remember when I was struggling to get the spacer blocks out earlier, I now had to undo the pocket screws again just to get these pieces to fit properly. So I'm about to make a critical mistake in the assembly of these two guide blocks. I end up gluing this vertical guide piece in the wrong location, and this creates a 3/4 inch gap where the leg slides in. When I go to do the final assembly, it's going to require shims in order to make the legs fit tight. This is an oversight on my part, but I'll make sure I don't do it again on the next module I build. So I forgot to bring some shop towels into the garage to wipe up the excess glue. It's a little bit messy, but hey, we're not building fine furniture here. So once I had the first side all glued up, I just had to rinse and repeat 3 more times, once for each corner.
A little unorthodox, but here we are.
So now I'm going to test fit my leg assemblies. This is where I discovered that my pockets are a little too large, as you'll see as I plug it in here. So here I'm installing a temporary 3/4 inch shim. These shims were made from some scrap pieces of wood from the shop floor. I'm just putting them in temporarily for now to make sure the legs have a nice tight fit. Alright, so as you can see, the module is done. I've just thrown a track on some sub-road bed here, and this is going to be roughly the height that the cars will be sitting at when I'm using this module. There will be some road bed underneath this, of course. However, you can see I can grab easily from this height. My eyes are just below the valance. I'm 5'8", so that worked out really well for me. This track is going to be sitting about 52 inches off the floor when this is all said and done. All right, that brings us to the end of the first build video. I will be doing a series of build videos for this module concept. So consider liking and subscribing to follow along. Some final thoughts on this. I've noticed it's the perfect height for me, which is great. Doing the mock-ups, as you've seen in the last video, really helped out. It does have a little bit of rock this way, laterally, and that's because there's no gusseting on here right now. I deliberately didn't do any gusseting just yet. It is going to be straddling a cabinet, and I need to get it over that cabinet first, figure out the door opening clearances, and then we'll do some gusseting. Front to back, it is solid. I cannot make it move in this direction. And this is solid as a rock, this valance here. So it's really nice being able to have the lights all integrated into each module. So in the next video, we're going to take this to completion. By doing that, we're gonna add a fascia, we're gonna add some skirting on the valance, we're gonna put in an MDF backdrop and a cover on the top to keep the dust from coming down here. And then we're gonna paint it to give it that shadow box appearance. So consider hitting like, subscribe, share this video with friends, and we'll see you in the next one. Or don't share it, I don't know, whatever. Oh, you tell me that wasn't recording. Ah! Oh, that was terrible. Ow. Ow, 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 ow. Ow. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. You gotta be kidding me. And again. Okay. God damn it. There we go. Oh, okay. Jesus. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. This thing didn't even turn on? For sakes. Ah. Christ. All right. So follow along. Stay tuned for this video. Have you ever wanted a module? No, I'm not going to appear in it. So stay tuned for the next video. We are going to cover painting, installing the back. So stay tuned for the next video. In the next video, we're going to. So stay tuned for the next. Fuck. Just to test to see if this is the right place to stand and if you can actually see my hairline. All right, well that build brings, all right, that build, no, don't like that. Also you'll, I hate this.